Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome back to the Bookster podcast from inside the SaaS holiday rental software company Bookster, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Follow along as Bookster discuss their journey and their inner workings. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you find these conversations insightful and ultimately helpful. Now, I'm joined today, as always, by CEO and co-founder of Bookster, Robin Morris. Hello, Robin, again.
Hello, Simon. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. How are you today?
Not bad. Enjoying the vaguely sunny Scottish weather.
I know. Our one day of summer.
It's come
Enjoy
early
it. Get
this year.
outside. And we're joined again on this episode by Colin Guthrie, again, Technical Director for Bookster. Colin, thank you again for your time today.
Not a problem.
Are you enjoying the sunshine today?
I am, yes. I've transitioned from my winter trousers to my summer shorts, and regardless if the temperature goes down again, I've made my decision and I'm now sticking with it.
Yeah, a man of principle. I like
Yeah.
it. I
Absolutely.
like it.
Yeah, I think as a man of shorts yourself, Simon, you'll approve of
I am
Colin's
actually
general.
wearing shorts myself today. So yes, I'm with you on that one. Good. That's not what people are here to hear about, though. But
Probably
there
not,
you
no.
I don't know. Let's have
Right.
a short conversation about shorts. Wrap it up and get
Wrap it
off.
up. That's it. Right. Well, if anyone is still listening to this podcast, we're going to talk today about a very interesting subject. We've got a title for it: "Bad People on the Internet," and I mean that covers a whole. There are bad people on the internet, by the way, if you didn't know that. Surprising to hear, but for you guys, that must bring its own issues and problems and headaches. We're talking, I guess, generally about cybersecurity and how that affects you guys. So perhaps
Yep.
you just start the conversation by telling us a little bit about any sort of experiences you've had with it, or how it's affected Bookster and how you deal with it.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely in Colin's realm, but I'm going to start anyway.
Fair enough.
Just to broadly talk about so cybersecurity as a company that is operating an online application. Clearly, we are exposed to people attempting to gain access to our systems or bring us down or compromise our clients' data, things like that. Um, and as we grow in profile, it probably just becomes a bigger issue because we start turning up in various searches that people do. We become as you become bigger, you become a bigger target, I suppose. So yeah, so that's broadly what we're talking about here. So yeah, so I suppose maybe Colin, what
Yeah, sure.
kinds of things do
Yeah,
people try to do?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of these things these days. There's so many automated tools out there. There's so many, you put a website out there and almost immediately there'll be people trying to break into it in some way, shape, or form. Now, quite often these are stab in the dark attempts. So there's lots of software products out there, lots of open source products out there. You've got your content management systems like WordPress. You've got your utility tools like PHP MyAdmin, which is a web front end to a database back end, a sort of generic tool. Um, and these are often installed on servers out there on the internet. And quite often you put up any website, even if it's just completely static pages, there's no sort of programming element to it, you will see in your logs almost immediately requests for the URL that starts /php myadmin or /administrator/ whatever, for these common kind of tools out there, because people are just looking for unsecured or default passwords, access to these tools and utilities that are on any website. So, no matter what you do, even if you're a tiny company and you've got two clients, you put a website out there, it will almost, it won't take long before you start seeing those things in your weblogs. But when you become bigger, the problem ramps up a bit. we have, on a daily basis, hundreds of thousands of requests that are arguably nefarious in some way, shape, or form. Now, these vary from relatively harmless attempts, like I've just described there, for people trying to find these kind of software tools. Now, we obviously don't have any of those installed on any server that's publicly facing. They'll also get attempts that are a bit more tailored. So I think probably one of the sort of watershed moments for us when we were sort of running the business is when someone took the time and effort to clone our website and pretend to fake our login pages. Sort of meant we've made it now. Someone that actually values our business so greatly that they'll go to that effort of copying our login page in order to try and attempt to lure our clients to log in there instead and give up their username and password.
Yeah. So that's a classic phishing
attempt.
attack,
Yeah.
basically.
And so, a lot of our customers, you can find out who our customers are relatively easily because, their website will link back to ours. You can look for inbound links. You can then target their publicly facing email addresses because our clients are ultimately public facing. They want inquiries, they want people to contact them to make bookings, etc. So finding their details is relatively straightforward. They can then be targeted and told, send them an email that looks like it comes from Bookster, says, please log in here to look at your latest booking. Here's a link. They click on that link. It goes to a website that looks like Bookster but isn't. They give up their username and password, and hopefully then that person will get their login details and they can go and explore the real Bookster, try and harvest data or use it in some other nefarious way.
Yeah. So in that
hoping...
case,
Yes,
in that case, even though we have two-factor authentication on Bookster, so if someone does this to us, they wouldn't necessarily be able to get. So they wouldn't, as a result, necessarily be able to get into Bookster's data. But
Not
what they might have
necessarily.
achieved, not necessarily, but what they might have achieved is access to our clients' email login. So, like, say they had
If they've
a,
reused
you
their
know,
password
they
or
reused their
something
password,
like
they
that.
reused the same password, which, do not do if you're out there.
Mm.
So,
Don't
if
do
they're
it.
There
using
are
the same
bad people on
password,
the internet. Yeah.
there are bad people out there.
My
So,
1, 2, 3, 4 passwords has got people stumped.
Yeah, that's it. It's the kind of
Fine.
no
password
one
an
would
idiot
ever
would have on
use
his
that.
luggage. That's a Spaceballs reference, in case anyone didn't get it.
I mean, I guess Is there a way? I mean, certainly, we're talking generally, but bringing it back to sort of Bookster, is there a way that your clients can tell that any email or whatever is not coming from you? Do you know what I mean? Is there something they should look out for?
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
yeah.
you have to look out for the sending domain of the email. So it has to be from @booksterhq.com. We have various things within our email infrastructure that says no other servers are allowed to send email from our domains. Only the servers that we've authorized are allowed to do that. So theoretically, email is a incredibly loose system. Is a bizarre kind of mishmash of protocols that have grown up since the early days of the internet, and security has very much not been designed in from the start. It's all been bolted on afterwards with various additions and extensions, and it depends on your provider's support for those extensions, etc. But it's generally any major provider now will be honoring these kind of security checks, etc. So generally speaking, if it comes from @booksterhq.com, it's usually from us. Now, that's not to say that there are not ways and means of getting into those platforms and sending email from the authorized senders without our permission. So you do still have to be wary, even if it's from the from address is purports to be genuine. Any links that you click on an email, you have to make sure that you very much trust the email before you click on it. If you can look at the link rather than just clicking and make sure it goes to a domain that you recognize, that's great. But even still, nowadays with domain names, it's very easy to register a domain name that looks very slightly like Bookster. Maybe it's got three O's in it instead of two. So on first glance, the human eye is very much susceptible to the beginning and the end of the words, and they kind of gloss over the letters in the middle, so it might look genuine. Similarly, strange characters that look like an O but isn't an O, or looks like a B but isn't a B. All of these things can be manipulated in order to send you to a phishing website. And obviously, we can't control all of the variations of the spelling and pronunciation of Bookster to register all the domain names out there. So there will always be the chance of that happening. What to do, generally speaking, is if you get an email that says log in, click here, you can just go to Bookster yourself. You don't need to click on the links. Go to the Bookster website. You can find what we're referring to fairly easily just by going to your bookmark and looking for it. So that's another safety tip. Bookster also has two-factor authentication. Robin mentioned that already. So we mandate that for all of our sort of main clients. We've got different levels of user access. So for all the people that are dealing with a lot of sensitive data, we mandate that they have two-factor authentication. That's an additional, we support an additional application that you would have on a smartphone, where whenever you log in on a new device that's sort of new to your login, you would have to type in an additional verification code that only your device has. So that's the two-factor is the principle is that there's knowledge, which is your username and password, and then something physical, which is this additional code. So if someone steals your username and password, they try and log in, they can't get in because they don't have the physical thing that you need in order to validate that login. Now, it's not impossible to phish these two-factor things as well. Someone could be sent to a website that looks like our login page, that asks for the username and password, and then subsequently asks for a two-factor code. But what it does is that website that's pretending to be us would actually have to be talking to us in the background, acting as a sort of skim layer over the top, and in real time log in order to get a session for that customer. They couldn't at a later date log in again. They would have to keep that session alive in order to get data. So it's not infallible, but it's an extra barrier. It's all about building up extra barriers to prevent people from logging in. And we've got a lot of logging in the back end to know when things look a bit suspicious. So we can take action if we think actually, yeah, they passed two-factor, but we're still a bit unsure about that. So we'll maybe not actually allow this login and ask for further validation.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think broadly speaking, it's like an arms race, basically.
yeah,
We're trying to stay one step ahead of everyone that or anyone that might attempt to do something nefarious to Bookster. So, keeping up to date with as many security patches as we can and coding in a really defensive way so that people can't, inject things into our code. It it's kind of we're building up these walls, but the attackers are also building ladders all the time. So you know
Mhm.
you're just constantly building the walls, and they're constantly building the ladders, and you're just hoping that you're always
staying ahead. Yeah.
got enough bricks to keep ahead.
And I guess that comes back, kind of related to our last episode of being agile. I suppose one of the benefits, perhaps, so you're always thinking about these things and sort of exploring new ways to keep your
Yeah,
clients
well,
safer.
exactly, and it's one of these things that the agile process is great in terms of adapting to what's needed. It's just unfortunate when you've got a feature that you're trying to develop, but then ultimately you have to delay that because you're having to deal with a certain attack that's coming in, or here's a new structure that someone's trying, and well, let's make sure we've got enough defense in place for that, and let's try and make sure we've got ability to block off denial of service attacks and various things like that as well. So yeah, it's good that we can adapt to it, but it's annoying that it has to be done. But that's
Mm.
just one of the sort of sad realities of working on the internet, working with
So really, what you want to do is employ one of these hackers and as a member of your staff.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean,
So,
that's quite a common thing. A lot of these people that start off in the black hat sort of approach to hacking and trying to find spaces turn themselves into security consultants ultimately at the end of the day. And it's yeah, it does happen, and yeah, there's lots of companies out there that specialize in services to help people. There's various sort of web application firewalls that you can sort of place in front of your product. So it all the incoming traffic comes into them. They can do lots of analysis, not just on your customers, but across the wider ecosystem that they're dealing with. They'll be able to spot nefarious activity and block it before it even reaches your servers. Um, so those services are really good. There's also loads of tools out there now for doing static analysis of your code to spot possible injection. So Robin mentioned injection. That's a standard kind of approach that the bad people on the internet take, which is manipulate. You always have to pass data into your application. So whether it's setup information at the back end or query information for front end searching or whatever, you're passing values in, and ultimately something has to read the user input and process it. And if you don't completely have a zero trust model of that user input, you're going to run into problems. So a lot of the time people try and do escaping tricks. So they know that your value is going to go into a database. So instead of a numeric value 1, they'll actually supply you with one quote, semicolon, and then some SQL statements in the hope that you pass that straight through to your database server and it leaks information and allows them to manipulate information, etc. So yeah, lots of static analysis tools to help detect those kind of problems when you're trusting input incorrectly. Um, and there's also lots of dynamic testing tools as well, where you can create, you can deploy either a sandbox version of your application with, and let these tools loose with a login. They're able to simulate logins. They're able to go through your whole application. They'll hammer lots of data at it that's nefarious. They'll try and break it. They'll try and inject cross-site scripting tools, and that can produce a big report to you saying, we were able to do X, Y, and Z in your application. These are all the recommendations for fixes. So there's tools out there that you can just use, but they're a bit complex to set up. But there's lots of companies out there that offer that as a service, which is really useful. So yeah, there's a whole depth of process to go on in your sort of approach to the sort of web security.
and I mean, the clients are obviously putting their faith in businesses like yourself, SaaS
Mhm.
software companies like you, to keep their data, safe, basically. Um, just in terms of running a business or setting up a business, is there some sort of, I don't know, insurance that you take out against this sort of thing, or does that get covered
Well,
anywhere?
I mean, we have professional liability insurance, so some of that would be covered, yes. Um, so
There
yeah,
are
yeah,
specific insurance policies
yeah.
against cyber attacks and things like that, but the premiums of them are very steep, and have to be sort of traded off as part of your business analysis. The likelihood and what kind of data can be exfiltrated and who's affected, etc. So I think that whole industry and the premiums involved. There's even kind of ransom insurance and stuff like that as well these days. And ransomware is
Mm.
another side of things where companies would effectively get into your systems and steal your data. So they'll they'll encrypt it with a key that only they have, and they won't give you the key unless you pay them lots of money. Um, there's so many different attack vectors. I think the insurance and the sort of that whole industry is still very young, and I think it's a bit of it's such a dynamic, moving kind of process of the attack vectors and the insurance premiums have always got their get out clauses, and force of nature and blah blah blah. I think it's a very interesting space for insurance, but I'm not sure it's one that necessarily would always pay out for people.
One one I suppose key thing to do is don't store more information than you need. So,
Yeah.
and this, if you're setting up a, software application, SaaS application, don't ask your users for, information that you don't really need to have from them. So that would be my biggest advice. Because
Yeah.
if someone does get into your system, it doesn't matter so much. I mean, for us, as an example, is um, credit card information. So we try, where possible, to not have that stored inside Bookster. So, when we really can, we just don't do that at all. Um, but other things, like date of birth or people's home addresses and things, if you don't need it, don't ask for it, don't store it.
Don't store it.
That's kind of the first thing.
And likewise, like we obviously have to store a certain amount of information about our customers, but our customers are more transient. So, for Bookster, for our product, it's guests. So guests come along, they make a booking, the booking happens, and that's them. Now, there might be occasions where you get repeat bookings. Obviously, that's actually something we generally encourage and try and help our clients get repeat bookings. But that sort of thing is time constrained, and we don't need to store that information more than we need to. So we actually have automated tools within Bookster to help our clients not store too much data in Bookster. We have automatic anonymizing tools which will take their booking data and anonymize them automatically after a period of 2 to 5 years or whatever, the configuration that they choose. So if I don't need to know anything 2 years ago, anonymize it. Take the email addresses out, take the customer names out and the addresses out and these kind of things. So, we take that sort of very seriously. Don't store the data you don't need. Yeah.
Yeah, no, pretty good advice. And in terms of just you know how often, how often should somebody, an individual perhaps, change their password on the internet to help them stay safe?
I mean, changing passwords is only really needed if you think your password's compromised. If you've got a secure password, and you're using it for one application in one place, if it's secure, it's secure. Changing it all the time, yes, it helps occasionally. If it is compromised and you don't know about it, then yes, changing your password is obviously a sensible thing. So there is ultimately a sensible amount of time to change your password. But I think other things are more important, like making sure that the tools that you're using report when you log in and make sure you spot any activity that you know shows when you logged in but you didn't actually. And likewise, things like two-factor much more important, and using unique passwords and not guessable passwords. Brute
These
force attacks are
password,
still a thing.
yeah,
People will try every combination of passwords. Use different characters, different letters. Try to avoid words. Try to avoid sequences, etc. But also for brute force attacks, they become easier to do over time. As computing power goes up, you can try every combination of a password faster. Now, some password policies on products are actually self-defeating. If you say you need to have a password that's between 8 and 10 characters long, has an upper and lowercase character, and needs a special symbol, that's reducing the attack surface. You know that the attack surface has
Yeah.
to have a combination that meets those rules in order to be a valid password. If you say it can be anything from 8 to 20 characters long, knock yourself out, that's a massively higher attack
Mm.
space, and would take
yeah.
much longer to brute force. So
The, yeah.
sometimes these policies are actually counterproductive. They're sensible in theory, they sound very sensible, but actually, if you leave it as a more open thing, it's more combinations, as long as people are good at actually doing it and not typing password 123.
Yeah. And using a password manager to put in different randomized passwords every different
Yeah,
time you log into, or every different service that you log into,
it's
is
a very
generally
valid
a
thing to
good
do.
idea.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's what these password managers are good at. Obviously,
Okay.
don't give away your master password, then everyone's got access to all your passwords. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, yeah, that's a good idea because you get different password for everything, and it's pretty random what it is that it's generating, and yeah.
Okay.
So that,
And just, I think probably just the final question on this topic for today would be, I mean, how obviously you have your own security stuff in place, and you know your walls, whatever. But if someone was to try and sort of get into your system, how quickly would you know that? I mean, how, is it a sort of instant thing, or does it rely on somebody contacting you, one of your clients, to say, "Oh, this has happened"? Or
It will depend on the type of attack. Ultimately, we've got a lot of tools and monitoring in place that lets us detect these things happening, and these sort of nefarious attacks can kind of ping up and say, well, there's a bit of suspicious activity here. So there are tools that help detect these things. If it very much appears like someone's password has been compromised, maybe their two factors been compromised, or something is in some way been able to steal their active session and hijack that essentially, then it's quite hard to detect when these things happen. It's unfortunately the sort of nature of the game. So but yeah, we do have reporting tools. We can sort of say that this session has been accessed from this location that seems suspicious, and then we can take action to help that customer secure their data. But yeah, it's a tricky one overall, for sure.
yeah, a minefield. Well, look, thank you both for your time today. It's been a very interesting conversation today. I didn't know there was bad people on the internet, but now I do. So thank you for that.
No worries. Be safe out there.
Safe out there. So look, thank you for that. Thank you for listening, everybody, and watching on YouTube. Quick reminder that we do have our sister podcast as well, which is Smashing Your Visitor Rental Goals. So that's available out in the world as well. If you'd like to look for that and leave a favourable review if you listen to it, please do. Please listen to our podcast and leave a review as well if you'd like. That would be very gratefully received. If you have any questions about today's topic or any other topics that we've covered so far, please email podcast@booksterhq.com and we shall answer them in future episodes. But for now, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, both of you.
thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
Andy.
you.
Thank you, Colin. I'm off to now change a few passwords, and we shall see you all again very soon.